Hello, SpongeX here with the third episode of my Mario Party series review. I've already reviewed the latest entry, Super Mario Party Jamboree, and the very first Mario Party game. So let's move on to the sequel, Mario Party 2, released in 1999, about a year after the first one. For many years, I've heard people praise this as the greatest entry in the series, so let's revisit it and see if it upholds its reputation. The game truly does feel like a continuation of the first game, reusing the same character models, animations, and voice clips from the first game, feeling like you're just playing a direct expansion of what the first game gave us. So while our heroes are placed in completely new environments, they feel just like levels and minigames that would have fit in perfectly with the first game. I always love that charm of old 3D game sequels where an entirely new game still feels familiar, as if like you just opened up a whole new world that you couldn't access in the first game, without relying on rehashing or repeating everything the first game had to offer, with great examples being Banjo-Tooie or The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The game also contains the same composer from the first game. No music tracks in the first game are recycled per se, but we got a lot of catchy and memorable tunes that feel like lost tracks from the first game. I forgot to mention about the first game, but one thing that was so jarring about the original Mario Party trilogy was how drastically different the characters sounded, with Charles Martinet being the only familiar voice in that game, with Charles Martinet being the longest running voice of Mario from 1991 all the way up to 2023. Everyone else sounds drastically different. Luigi was not voiced by Charles Martinet, so instead of his more chilled and relaxed voice from Mario Golf or Tennis, or his more timid nature from every game starting with Luigi's Mansion, Luigi in the Mario Party game sounds a lot louder. It was honestly my least favorite voice out of Luigi out of any of his video game appearances. Yahoo! Princess Peach did not have the sweet and soft-spoken voice that she is well known for. It wasn't really until Mario Golf, Tennis, and the GameCube era where she got that more familiar voice that we're used to. So in the original game, she had a really loud and shrill voice, and I honestly hated it. Yoshi made the same strange noises that he made in previous games like Super Mario World or Mario Kart 64, and to me that was jarring because the very first game I ever played was Yoshi's Story, so that was not only my introduction to video games, but my introduction to Yoshi, even the Mario series. And so, Yoshi was reinvented to have a cuter voice in Yoshi's Story, where his main dialogue was very Pokemon-like, where he just mostly says his name now, along with a few random exclamations like wow, whoa, grunting, snarling, and a whole bunch of cute gibberish. So, I always loved the cute Yoshi noises from Yoshi's Story, and so it was very jarring to then play games like Mario Kart 64 or Mario Party and notice how Yoshi made these really weird alien-like noises. I honestly didn't like it very much. Only a few other N64 games used Yoshi's Yoshi Story voice, including Super Smash Bros. And Mario Tennis. And it wasn't until the GameCube era where Yoshi's voice permanently became the Yoshi Story voice, and it still carries on to this day. Donkey Kong also had a drastically different voice. Back then they used these really loud and annoying ape-like sounds, and I honestly hated those old sound clips. They were first used in Mario Kart 64, and they were used in nearly every N64 game that featured Donkey Kong except for DK64, where Donkey Kong got a more human-like voice in that game in the form of Grant Kirkhope, the composer of Banjo-Kazooie and the voice of Mumbo Jumbo. It's a shame that Grant's voice as Donkey Kong was only used in one other game and it was just recycled voice clips for the game Mario Golf Toadstool Tour on GameCube. Honestly, I love Grant Kirkhope as Donkey Kong, but they just had to move on with the buyout of Rare, I guess, and so it wasn't until 2004 with Mario Power Tennis where Donkey Kong got his current and longest running voice actor, a Japanese voice actor named Takashi Nagasako, who was the voice of Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time and the Japanese voice of Big the Cat from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Takashi's take on Donkey Kong is a much more playful take on the character, showing off DK's more curious and ape-like nature while still being able to display his tough nature as well. He also laughs like Scooby-Doo now. Wario was also not voiced by Charles Martinet and had a much deeper and louder sounding, stereotypically Russian voice in this game. It wasn't as funny or pleasant as his higher pitched and nasally voice clips from Mario Kart 64 or the following Mario Sport games on N64 and GameCube. Across the N64 and first half of the GameCube era, starting with Super Mario 64 in 1996 all the way up to 2007 on the GameCube, Bowser used to have a drastically different voice. He made nothing but beastly roars, growls, and deep devilish laughs. It really fit Bowser's monstrous appearance and behavior. Nowadays, Bowser really has lost a lot of his edge and became more of a bumbling joke villain. He's now voiced by Kenneth W. James, who makes Bowser sound like a goofy children's entertainer. I honestly do not like Bowser's current voice very much. It's not awful per se, I just really miss when he actually sounded like a force to be reckoned with. It really matched his appearance. But Nintendo insists on dumbing down Bowser for the kiddies nowadays, so... You know, when I was a kid, I didn't love Bowser because he was a bumbling moron who made kids laugh. I loved him because he was a badass threat and a challenge. I was shocked that I actually liked Jack Black as Bowser in the Mario movie, because I feared they would make him goofy throughout, but they managed to find a good balance to make him both goofy and menacing when the movie needed to. So, the voice cast and sound quality of Mario Party can be quite a sore to listen to, but none of that compares to the annoyance that comes from the announcer. In the first 3 Mario Party games, they had this loud and nasally woman voicing all these narrations and anything from like starting the minigame or ending the minigame, calling it a draw. My god, is it annoying. It's almost like Lois Griffin is narrating everything. And so, announcers should make events fun and exciting, not annoying and off-key. Later Mario Party games replaced the nasally female voice with more generic male and female voices who sound more like they're about to show us a PowerPoint presentation for a business meeting. There's like no emotion or excitement in their voice, so why can't the announcers have like the same energy as the announcer from the first 2 Super Smash Bros. Games or something? Imagine how much more exciting it would be like if you have like someone shouting like, "Go!" or "Finish!" or, you know, it's like that would make these games so much more exciting. So, let's get a voice that actually sounds proud and excited to be a part of this action. So, the game opens up with a fun and humorous cutscene of Toad presenting a play, telling the story of how Mario and his pals invented a new theme park, but become puzzled over what to name this new land. Wario starts a heated fight as he demands that it should be named after himself, Wario Land. Sit down, Wario, you've already had about 2 or 3 of these Wario Lands at this point. Everyone calms down as Peach seems to step in to be the voice of reason, until we get the comical twist of Peach wanting it to be named after herself, and everyone continues fighting. Suddenly, Bowser starts attacking all of the parks within the land. A friendly Koopa tries warning them, but they comically ignore him. Toad decides the land will be named after whoever saves the land from Bowser's wrath, as everyone agrees, and they set off for their next adventure. Right from the start, the game's intro does a better job at drawing in players with a much more funnier and more engaging conflict. It's still nothing to write home about, but compared to the first game where everyone's just arguing over wanting to be a superstar, this one definitely is a step up. Despite Bowser's big presence throughout the first game, he's not presented in the intro cutscene, so it just kind of feels forced when all of a sudden throughout the game you see Bowser as this big threat despite how he got no intro. And so I like how Mario Party 2 does a better job at actually showing that Bowser has an antagonist role in the story and why he needs to be stopped and all of that. So yeah, the story of Mario Party 2, it may once again paint the characters to be self-centered, but it at least topped the first one by getting kids more excited for the madness that's about to unfold. The game carries over the same gameplay from the first Mario Party game, as we run around board maps to play minigames, to collect coins in exchange for stars. Whoever has the most stars in the end wins. There are a few differences, both minor and major. So the chance time spaces are now green spaces instead of blue spaces, but they practically function the exact same way. Unlike the first game where all the chance time events had different backgrounds to fit whichever board map you're on, in this game they simplified it by having all of them just be like a room full of treasure. The mushroom spaces have been removed. One-player minigames were replaced with item minigames. The board maps now contain a permanent staple that has reappeared in every Mario Party game since, which are the items. Items allow assistance to players with the inclusions of the mushroom, which allow 2 dice rolls in 1 turn, the gold shrooms, which allow 3 dice rolls in 1 turn, warp blocks, which swap you with the place of another random player, the plunder chest, which allows you to steal items from a player of your choice, the Boo Bell, which allows players to summon Boo to appear at your space, and you can pay him 5 coins to steal coins from another, or pay him 50 coins to steal a star from another player. So unlike the first game, Boo's service is no longer free, but he can still steal more than 10 coins this time. He can even steal about 30 coins if you're lucky enough, but on average he usually steals a little over 20, that is if your opponent actually has that many. Other items include the skeleton key, which can be used to open gates for shortcuts to get to a star quicker, the Bowser costume, which allows a player to dress up as Bowser and steal coins from other players if you run into them while wearing the costume within a dice roll. The costume disappears once the wearer's turn ends. I always loved this item, but there's rarely ever a chance where I see anyone actually get this item. It's not really available in the item stores, and it seems to be a rare item that pops up on the overworld, but I've rarely ever seen someone actually steal coins from this. It only gives you a 10 dice roll, and a lot of the times when I see a CPU like activate this item, there's like no other CPU or players in sight, and so yeah, it just kind of anticlimactic. One of the most highly seeked items in this game is the magic lamp, which summons a genie who will warp us straight to a star, but we still have to have 20 coins to buy the star. The dual glove activates new minigames called dual minigames, so each level has its own exclusive dual minigame. Dual games can also be activated during the last 5 turns of a party, where 2 players landing on the same space will trigger a duel hosted by a Goomba, and whoever landed on the space that triggered the duel is allowed to place a wager for how many coins each player must sacrifice, and whoever wins gets to keep the full bet, doubling the coins they bet on. The items were a great addition to the series, but this game honestly has the worst implementation of the items out of the entire series. You can only hold up to 1 item at a time, and you're forced to use them up if you want to collect more items down the line. Now this can be a problem when you get a skeleton key, which can only be used to open a gate. So, unlike later entries where you can actually discard the keys if you don't think you'll be needing them. The 1 item limitations get very annoying. If a player gets a plunder chest, there's no point in aiming to buy or win an item after that, because chances are the player with the plunder chest will just steal it the next turn. Luckily, Mario Party 3 did fix these issues by giving us 2 additional item slots, allowing us to hold up to 3 items at a time, along with the option to discard the items that we don't want to use, including the keys. The worst item in this game is the Bowser Bomb. Baby Bowser from the first game returns as a dark opposite to Toad. So as the game begins, not only do we see where Toad's star space is, but we also see where Baby Bowser's space is as well. Baby Bowser serves as a downgrade to Bowser's spots from the first game. Baby Bowser will just steal 5 coins from us if we walk past him, unlike Bowser where he would steal 10 or more coins depending on which board map you were on. So Bowser is no longer spread around the board maps, although his spaces are still there. So every time someone collects a star from Toad, Baby Bowser will move his spot over to where the last star was collected. And if an unlucky player gets a Bowser Bomb from a minigame, at the end of the current turn, Bowser will appear where Baby Bowser's spot is, as Bowser rolls 3 dice at once, and if he crosses paths with an unlucky player, Bowser will steal all of their coins. On top of that, Bowser spaces are still a thing, so with the return of the Torture Roulette involving stealing coins and chance time events, he even has some fake out ones that promise players 1,000 coins or free stars, but every time this happens, he acts like Donald Trump when someone confronts him over his bullshit, and he flees like a coward. Another form of punishment Bowser has is called Bowser Revolution, where he takes everyone's coins and divides them equally, so everyone will have the same amount of coins. Good for those who have close to 0 coins, but terrible for those who have collected over like 50 coins. Overall, Bowser is a bigger and badder threat in this game, both in story and even in gameplay. I personally think the inclusion of Baby Bowser really slows the game down. It went by so quick in the first game, but now it takes twice as long, as we have to see where both Toad is going to be spawned, followed by where Baby Bowser will spawn as well. We have the introduction of the hidden blocks, these random events where a lucky player will find a block on a random space and it can contain either 20 coins or a free star. It's real annoying when a CPU gets one of these. Another new addition are the battle spaces, green spaces with lightning bolt symbols on them. Landing on them will summon Goomba to force everyone to participate in what's called a battle minigame. He spins a roulette to determine how many coins we must fork over as a wager, which can range from 10, 20, 30, to even 50 coins. There aren't a whole lot of battle minigames, but these minigames reward a huge chunk of the wager to the first place winner, where there's a smaller prize for second place, and it may even randomly give a pity coin to either third or fourth place. It feels so weird if fourth place actually gets a pity coin, but it gives third place nothing. That always feels so wrong to me. The idea of battle minigames were an interesting idea, but most of these minigames feel so pointless to be limited as battle minigames. It would have made more sense to just have the battle minigames just be random 4-player minigames that you can play regularly in the 4-player minigame mode, but they'll have adjusted rules to work as a battle minigame or something. I get that the biggest difference in these minigames is that it can reward whoever's in second place with a prize as well, unlike regular 4-player minigames. So many of these minigames feel elimination based, but meanwhile there are a lot of 4-player minigames that feel like they would have fit better as a battle minigame, yet they aren't. So with minigames like Hot Rope Jump or Honeycomb Hayvac, how come those weren't battle minigames? I feel like it might have worked better because those are elimination based. I really don't get how the mindset for the minigame rules work in this game. It's really confusing, honestly. A good percentage of these battle games are just repurposed minigames from the first game, but some are just horrible luck-based minigames. There's another new gimmick called the Bank Spaces, where walking past the Bank Spaces has Koopa force players to deposit 5 coins into the bank. If anyone lands on the bank space, they are rewarded with all the coins that were stored in the bank within the number of turns in that game. One of the most exciting features of Mario Party 2 is that within every level, there's a costume theme to match with the setting. As Bowser invades these lands with a new persona, our heroes suit up in an appropriate attire to challenge him, with the ending of each party having the game's winner be the one to take down Bowser. It's a great way of evolving the first game and making it more fun, entertaining, and exciting. The way the award ceremony gets interrupted each time with a cutscene of Bowser causing trouble only for the mysterious hero who opposes him to be revealed as the game's winner, that was a really great addition. I wish other Mario Party games could have topped that somehow, but no, none even tried replicating this. So honestly, this game has the best presentation when it comes to the party aspect. People have been begging for over 20 years now for the costume gimmick to return, and it never has. I think it would be even greater to be able to unlock costume pieces in future games where we can customize our characters' appearances and even have presets to fit like certain levels. So just like in Super Mario Odyssey, how you could customize Mario with costume pieces. I wish they could have a feature like that for the playable characters. So instead of having costumes exclusive to one map, let us choose how we want the characters to dress throughout the entire game. Not to mention that with the introductions of many characters after the release of Mario Party 2, it would be nice to see these characters get their own outfits, with the likes of characters like Waluigi, Rosalina, and Daisy as a few examples. So the costume gimmick was really fun, but it's a shame that they were locked strictly behind the board maps. For every time a minigame arrived, the characters revert back to their default outfits. Despite the primitive graphics, I think most of these outfits look great on the characters, but Princess Peach leaves a lot to be desired in near every level. Her outfits felt very lazy compared to the others. And I mean, come on, this is Princess Peach. She's been proven to be one of the most fashionable characters out of the entire series. So they insist on Peach wearing her poofy pink dress with every outfit she wears, while giving her a tiny shirt to wear over it. Now, considering how Peach has like arguably the tiniest torso out of all these characters, it means that a lot of the shirts that she wears will barely be noticeable. It would have been nice for them to recolor or retexture her dress to match the other outfits better. For instance, with Pirate Land, they should have had her dress have like a blue and white striped pattern to match like the pirate aesthetic. Or with Mystery Land, they should have given her a dress to match the color of her hat and shirt, or at least they should have given her some khaki shorts or something. The only outfit that looked right on Princess Peach, in my opinion, was her Horrorland outfit. I mean, that pink witch's hat and cloak, it really fits well with the pink dress she's already wearing. So for me, that was the only outfit that looked right on her. Everything else just looked like, they could have done a lot better. DK admittedly looks off in many of these levels as well. It's just so weird to see Donkey Kong wearing a shirt, but I know I'm not alone when I say that many of us Mario Party fans want the costume party gimmick back. It was a whole lot of fun. It was one of the main reasons people remember this game. It was one of the first things you see when you see the box art of this game. You see Mario wearing a cowboy hat, and you see all these other characters wearing different outfits. I feel like that's what really drew people into this game. They wanted to play as Mario and friends in all these different outfits. It's shocking that the costume party gimmick was used so early on in the Mario Party series, and it was only used for the second entry. You think they would have waited years or decades later to present this idea, and it just feels so odd to show it in the second game and then never bring it back. So the idea of this Disney World hub world is a neat idea. Some maps really do kind of feel like a parody of the Disney parks, with Pirate Land kind of feeling like a nod to Adventureland, for that was the home of Pirates of the Caribbean. You could say Western Land, it feels like a tribute to Frontierland, Spaceland for Tomorrowland, and Horrorland for the Haunted Mansion. I guess the closest thing you have to what could resemble Fantasyland is the secret level, but a more morbid take on it, I guess, and I have no idea what Mysteryland is supposed to be. So there are only 5 levels and 1 hidden level in this game, 2 levels less than the first game, unfortunately. The hub world doesn't have as many attractions as the first game did either, but the houses from Mushroom Village seem to be condensed and repurposed to be more easily found in Mario Party 2 at least. So we got a simple menu where we select which level we want to go to. To the right, there's an options room with a sound test and all that. And the entrance to Minigame Land is towards the left, where Minigame Land is the closest thing you have to Mushroom Village, I guess. I wouldn't say it's as visually pleasing, though. It's just these little islands surrounded by water, a lot of grass, and got like these different entrances to different modes. Over to the left, we'll meet Woody, a giant talking tree, and he kind of replaces both the fortune teller from the minigame house and the shopkeep from the first game. So we can purchase the minigames from Woody through the coins that we've earned in party mode. Coins are more easy to obtain in this sequel. The first game only accepted the coins player 1 collected, while the stars were mainly used as a collectible for just unlocking the final level, for you needed 100 stars to unlock the final level. Then after that, stars are completely useless. Mario Party 2, not only are all the other players' coins added to the bank, but each star that each player collects gets converted to 50 additional coins, making coin collecting much easier and more rewarding in this game. Aside from Woody, this island also contains a bank to remind us of how many coins we currently have. There's also a message bottle that shows us our best time records that we've reached in certain minigames. So upon buying 5 minigames, the minigame stadium opens up. Similar to the first game, but this time it has 2 additional modes. So the 2 modes are basically focused on tournaments of minigames, with the first one being focused on battle minigames, where the other is focused on duel minigames. We also have Trial Mode, which leads us to an exclusive board map similar to the first game's minigame stadium, which gets rid of all the stars and board map gimmicks, Bowser Spaces, and all that, and it focuses on nothing but the minigames, while only featuring the red and blue spaces, but this time we got the inclusion of the battle minigames. I kind of liked Minigame Stadium a lot better in the first game. I preferred the first game's star-shaped map, and I loved the bushes that were shaped like the roster. That was a nice touch. In Mario Party 2, the board map is just a boring figure 8 shape. It doesn't really feel like they did much to decorate it. They added a few toads in the crowd, but other than that, it's really boring. It just doesn't stand out as much as the first one did. And then not to mention how in the first game, Minigame Stadium was great for collecting coins, because considering how a lot of the board maps on the regular single-player mode or party mode, how they had a lot of BS that basically stole all of your coins. And so it could have been where you wasted over an hour collecting coins just to end up with 5 in the end after an hour of gameplay because of all the CPU ganging up on you or all these terrible random events happening. So it makes you feel like you wasted a bunch of time. In Mario Party 2, you don't have to worry about that much, because honestly, the party mode rewards you more than the minigame trial mode does nowadays. Because the stars are worth 50 coins extra, and yeah, I just feel like you're better off collecting coins in party mode compared to the minigame trial mode. The 2 additional tournament modes are kind of boring as well. The duel mode is a great way to replay the duel minigames though, but you can only play the duel minigames you've actually discovered in the party mode, and you cannot buy these minigames from Woody, so they are the only minigames that you won't be able to find in the minigame park. You can only play them in the duel mode. The minigame park in the center of the land leads us to these 3 trees to represent the 4-player 1 versus 3 and 2 versus 2 minigames. This park serves as a great free play mode for where we can pick the minigames that we just want to play, the ones that we bought from Woody, that is, and we can play them as many times as we please. However, you might notice that there aren't any trees for item or battle minigames right away. Well, that's where we get to the worst part of Mario Party 2. So once you've earned enough coins and bought every single 4-player 1 versus 3 and 2 versus 2 minigame from Woody, you will unlock a new feature called the Minigame Coaster, which is this game's replacement for the first game's single-player mission challenge, Minigame Island. Minigame Island was a tough challenge that required us to travel a map similar to the overworld from Super Mario World, as each level space led to a minigame. We have to beat many minigames in a row to reach a checkpoint, allowing us to save and move on to the next set. Losing a minigame makes us lose a life, and if we lose them all, we get a game over and have to restart from the last checkpoint. It was challenging, but not impossible. Mario Party 2 really overdoes it, though. By having it be much more brutal in difficulty, it gives us less checkpoints and less chances of stocking up on lives. It doesn't help that many of these minigames are much harder than the selection from the first game, requiring too much luck. Minigame Island at least let us backtrack previous checkpoints and grind through minigames to collect 1-ups for some of the more challenging minigames later down the road. Minigame Coaster does not give us that luxury, for it's a one-way track. There are 3 difficulties to choose from: easy, normal, and hard. You can pretty much skip easy mode because it really just gives you a coin bonus at the end, but it really doesn't give you anything worth playing for. To 100% this game, you have to beat hard mode. So right away, you try selecting hard mode, but then it says that you have to beat normal mode first. And so normal mode only has you go through 6 worlds, where once you activate hard mode, it forces you to redo those 6 worlds, but on a harder difficulty. And then after that, you got 3 additional worlds to go through. So for the sake of this review, I'm going to use a sped up version of my footage, 20 times the speed, to give you an idea of how rough this mode was. It took me about 2 hours of gameplay to get through both normal and hard mode, and so this can kind of give you an idea of how repetitive this is. And admittedly, I did use save states during a few parts, but hey, it's not my fault that this game wants you to use lives on minigames that take dumb luck. It is really unfair. So each world contains about 4 to 6 minigames, so we go through some painful and frustrating minigames. We might get a few game overs just to finally reach World 6. We get an item tree seed, allowing us to plant an item tree in the minigame park, and we can also buy item minigames from Woody now. So then we're told to do it all over again, but on a harder difficulty. Also, if we go back to Woody and purchase all the item minigames, a piranha plant at the minigame park will gift us with a secret minigame called Dungeon Dash. It's just a reskin of a Mario Party minigame, more on that later. So as our patience gets tested, as we go through some stupid luck-based minigames once again, like Look Away and all this other bullcrap, we finally reach World 7, and our first minigame is one of the most annoying luck-based minigames here, Honeycomb Haylock. After we lose many lives or get many game overs from this, we finally reach level 2, which is likely the furthest most casual gamers have ever reached, and it's Mecha Marathon with overpowered CPU that button mash like crazy. So yeah, it's a button masher minigame, and I could not beat this as a kid, but over the years I finally learned a better trick to how to do it where it's still exhausting, but it's a more effective way of button mashing, and I'll explain a little bit more when I talk about the minigames. But so after busting your thumb to numbness and finally winning that minigame, you're greeted with another button masher right after. Holy hell, had enough? Oh, this game isn't done kicking your ass yet. You've got another button masher right after. And just when you think you finally have been given mercy, you're stabbed in the back with Shy Guy Says, and then Sneak and Snore with the most broken AI ever, giving you more game overs, forcing you to start all this crap all over. And trust me, if you're a Switch user, I will not shame you or blame you if you use save states. I admittedly resorted to it because I was just tired of being given headaches and thumb sores, and it will spare you a lot of time from seeing game over screens. It doesn't change the fact that you still have to beat the minigame fair and square. So, yeah, it's not like you're skipping segments. You're just skipping, going through all these instruction screens and all these loading times, you know. So it's just a way to try to get through it faster. That's all it is. So, it's bad enough that these minigames suck, but the CPU were unstoppable and psychic in some of these, especially in Sneak and Snore. That one took forever for me to beat. I hated that one. Hated it. But don't try crawling away in pain just yet. It needs to drag you by the butt back in and kick your ass even more. And so, we finally reach the goal. We are told by Toad that we were short on 1 coin and have to restart from the beginning, but we have the option to tell him no way. And right when that happens, the real Toad shows up and reveals that the one we're talking to is an imposter, and the fake is revealed to be not 1, but 3 baby Bowsers, and they force us to beat them in a game of Shell Shocked. But the game is rigged to where, unlike the regular game of Shell Shocked where everyone is hunting down each other, this one they all team up on us and try shooting us down all at once. It took me over 10 tries to luck out and finally beat them. Holy crap, that was a really hard challenge. It takes dumb luck to win, I am not kidding. So after going through hell and back, we come out victorious with the Battle Seed. We can now buy battle minigames from Woody. Upon buying all the battle minigames, we will once again be greeted by the Piranha Plant in the minigame park, and he'll gift us with another secret minigame called Rainbow Run, another reskin of a Mario Party 1 minigame, Once all minigames have been bought for all 5 minigame trees, Woody surprises us with 5 special minigames called Driver's Ed Course 1 through 5, where we drive around with the same tricky control scheme as seen in the minigame Bumper Balloon Cars, as we try to drive through these balloons while following the direction of these arrows. It's honestly a fun reward, but why did Nintendo have to make it so impossible for kids to reach, even for adults to reach? I was never able to get past Mecha Marathon as a kid, and even if I managed to make it past it as a kid, I likely would have gotten a game over from every minigame that followed. I absolutely hate the stupid minigame coaster mode. It is the worst part of this game. Never in my life have my thumbs ever felt so busted up. I felt like SpongeBob after that one episode where he broke his thumbs for giving too many thumbs up and he had to keep him in a wheelchair. All I could think of was that imagery. That's how my thumbs felt. So, after 100% beating the game on Wii U, I swore that I would never do this again. But for some reason, my stupid self had to torture myself for this review, and I went through it all again, this time on Switch, and it was just as miserable as it was before. I could have saved a lot of time if I just recorded footage off the Wii U version to save time, but no, I had to go back and torture myself for this review. I don't know why I did it, but I did. Nintendo, you're aware that children are your target audience, right? Why would you torture them like this? Why did you do this to us? You've likely crippled people's hands from the first game with those blisters in Mario Party 1, and then you make people beat the feeling out of their thumbs in the sequel. Why would you do this to us? Luckily, this is one of the last Mario Party games that have a mode that requires players to beat every single mini-game in order to complete the game. I mean, the underwhelming Mario Party Top 100 did have a mode that forces us to complete every mini-game to progress, but that game had no unlockable, so who cares? Super Mario Party Jamboree made a spiritual successor to both Minigame Island and Minigame Coaster, but the missions on there were optional. Many minigames were excluded from that mode, and not all minigames featured needed to be completed to unlock exclusive features or minigames. You might get some stupid decor that no one wants, and that's about it. So I am thankful that Nintendo finally ditched the minigame mission modes in future entries. But ever since Mario Party 3 onto Mario Party DS, they insisted on single-player modes that require winning the board maps to progress, which wasn't a very good substitute. It's still arguably less painful than going through the minigame coaster, but still not a very good option. There's a number of reasons for why minigame coaster was such a horrible idea. Forcing players to work their way over halfway through a course only to be forced to do it again, but under a harder difficulty, just to reach the last 3 worlds, giving us limited checkpoints and lives, and games like this are exactly why I hate it when gamers bitch over modern games getting rid of life systems. Because of nightmarish luck-based games like this is exactly why I'm glad that we no longer have lives in games. I've had to suffer through games like this for over 2 decades. I hated them as a kid, never liked them as an adult. I'm so glad that many games are realizing how useless life systems are, and yeah, I'd just rather every video game from now on just get rid of them. They suck. I never liked them. I don't get why people complain over stuff like that. I mean, you still got to beat the levels fair and square, so people are just whining over nothing. I'm so sick of these people complaining over game developers trying to make it a little more accessible for younger kids. It's not like it removes the challenge entirely. These games can still be hard even without lives, so just quit whining. I play games to have fun and relieve stress, not to make me hate my life even more than I already do, so I am so glad that modes like this are a thing of the past. Okay, now that I've gotten that nightmare out of the way, let's move on to the board maps themselves, followed by the minigames. So as we select our board, Toad changes outfits as he leads us down the pipe. I don't think the character select screen is as good as the first games, where the first game felt like a magical fall down a warp pipe with this whimsical music, and we select the characters as we see them falling. It was just really charming, and the character select now consists of pre-rendered images of the characters on these little square icons, and it's just not as fun as seeing the animated models of the characters falling. Overall, it's just a huge downgrade from the first game's presentation. The first board map is Pirate Land, as all of our characters dress up as pirates as we adventure around a board set between a few islands, bridged by docks. As we arrive, we are informed that Captain Bowser is looking for treasure and we need to defeat him. It's worth mentioning that compared to the first game, this game actually remembers most of your pause screen options, including the option to skip minigame explanation screens and speed up messages, but you still have to set the setting to save your progress after every turn, every time a new game is set. It wouldn't be until Mario Party 3 where it actually had the option to remember those settings every time. However, we still don't have an option to skip CPU or single player mini games, and that was an option that wasn't brought over until Mario Party 3. So for Pirate Land's item minigame, we have Roll Out the Barrels, a shuffling memory minigame where many items are hidden in these barrels, and we try to keep our eye on the prize as they shuffle around. Then once it stops, we have to pick our barrel and hope that we get the prize that we wanted. If we get Baby Bowser, we get nothing, and the same rule applies for every single item minigame in here. There's Baby Bowser, and you want to avoid him at all costs, and the same could go with Bowser Bombs, unless you think that strategically it could help you by sabotaging CPU. There's a real annoying random blue space in this game where landing on it causes a shark to force us to pay him a fee to ride across the island to the other side. There are a few cases where it might come in handy, but more often than not, it forces us to be taken past a star that we were chasing after. So this had no business being a random blue space. It either should have been part of a happening space or a simple NPC that we approach with the option to pay him or not for travel. So we also find the thwomps that serve the exact same purpose as the ones from Yoshi's Tropical Island in the first game. They make us pay a toll to take shortcuts, along with allowing us to bribe him to raise the toll for the rest of the game. The happening spaces have a pirate ship shoot cannons at us, and so anyone who's standing on the docks will get sent back to the start. It can be pesky, for it can happen very often, and the islands have a number of spaces, so it takes forever to traverse through this entire level. So I remember once playing a game where no stars were collected because people couldn't get past the first dock because someone kept landing on the happening space every time. So yeah, that was quite an annoying juggle. The duel minigame here is called Saber Swipe, where we compete in a swashbuckling sword fight as we quickly type in the button command before the other player does. It's probably my favorite duel minigame in this whole game. At the awards ceremony, just as the winner is about to be announced, we are informed that Captain Bowser is causing more trouble. We find a Koopa who found lost treasure, only for Captain Bowser to threaten him to hand it over. The winner of the game is revealed as the mysterious hero who opposes Bowser, as the hero breaks into a sword fight with Bowser, and it's even implied that Bowser got stabbed with a sword. Wow, and this is an E-rated game? And with that, our pirate adventure is over. As a kid, Pirate Land used to be my favorite board, but I do find the map a bit lackluster nowadays. It still has a nice tropical theming, but the map layout and happening spaces really make this board a drag quite a bit. So it's still a good map overall though, just kind of a faulty one. Up next is Western Land, set around a railroad that goes around a western town setting. Bowser the Brash has taken over the town, and we must save the town from him. Happening spaces will cause a train to move from one of 4 train stations around the map, as it rams players who are standing in the way, and it will send them back to start. You can even pay 10 coins at a train station to summon the train, and you can ride him to the next station, but it requires rolling a dice. If you land on Toad, you'll advance forward, but if you get a Goomba, it will go backwards to the previous train station instead, so it is quite a gamble. Wiggler hosts a milk bar where you can pay the Wiggler to summon all the players at the bar. As a kid, I wondered why anyone would want to waste so much money on a useless feature, but obviously it's a way to pull players away from getting close to the star. So most often I don't bother wasting my coins on this because it's just too overpriced, or usually by the time I get here no one's really that close to the star anyway, so it's never really worth the gamble for me. As a kid, this part did kind of confuse me though, because one minute we see the character cheering only to sit down with dizziness a few moments later. Only nowadays do I get it. It's obviously an implication that the characters got drunk at a bar, despite how it's a milk bar, but... So this detail was censored out in the remade version of the map from Super Mario Party Jamboree, but on the bright side, we actually got cutscenes of the characters sitting down and drinking milk this time, so it's kind of a good replacement at least. The item minigame Give Me a Break is a roulette wheel game where we pull on the brake to stop a baby train and collect whatever prize the arrow points to. This minigame takes dumb luck to win, for its halting ratio seems to randomly change each time this game loads up. As a kid, I thought the train had a really wobbly big nose, but nowadays I realize that it was a pacifier the whole time. But overall, I'm not a real big fan of this minigame. The dual minigame Quick Draw Quarks, where we have to wait for Goomba to shout go to fire our quarks into the backs of the other players with the press of the A button. It's okay. In the end, Bowser the Brash tries robbing a bank as we step in and defeat him in a silly quark gunfight. Next is Spaceland. It's one of my favorite maps in the game, but I do think it has one of the worst item and duel minigames here. It's a sci-fi level in a space station themed area. Our heroes are dressed up as fictional space heroes and are tasked to stop Black Hole Bowser. Happening spaces involve thwomps driving around in these hovercrafts that will chase us across the board. Players can also hire these police sniffets to patrol the area with speed traps, and they'll chase the thwomp drivers to even further distances, which can also chase the players into further distances if they're caught in the middle of the chase. One of the biggest things to worry about in this map is the center countdown. In the center of the map are these many split paths, and every time one path is taken, the giant countdown begins. And once it reaches 0, Bowser fires a laser from a giant laser beam, and it goes diagonally across the whole board. And if a player is caught in the blast, they lose all of their coins. If no player is in sight, the laser fails to fire, and the countdown resets back to 5 every time the laser fails or fires. The item minigame is Hammer Slammer, a button masher strength test game. We get whichever prize our hit lands on. This one is very tricky, for going too fast will cause the marker to bounce off the top of the bell and back down towards Baby Bowser. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of this one. It's really hard to find the right balance. The duel game isn't very fun either. It's not awful, it's just kind of boring. So Time Bomb has a Goomba tell us a number, and we have to wait patiently to count down to that number that Goomba gives us with the press of the A button. Whoever timed the button closest to the number of seconds that Goomba gave us is the winner. It's overall just a boring counting and waiting game. In the end, our hero saves Koopa from Black Hole Bowser by running circles around Bowser until we zap him from behind and send him flying. It's also worth mentioning that Spaceland has some of the best music in this game out of all the board maps. Mysteryland is honestly my least favorite level in the game, being themed around ancient ruins with aliens, bob-ombs, and UFOs. Yeah, it's pretty random. And people flipped out when Indiana Jones crossed archaeology with aliens, yet gave Mario Party 2 a pass when it did nearly the same thing a decade earlier. So our heroes are dressed up as expeditioners as they have to take down Bowser dressed as a silly sphinx as he's tormenting people to solve riddles and traps his victims in stone. Happening spaces warp our heroes across the 4 different ruins. The only way to traverse to the next set of ruins is by the happening space or by reaching a bob-omb UFO and paying them 10 coins to give us a ride. This level feels very similar to Wario's Battle Canyon from the first game, but honestly not as fun. I always found this to be the most forgettable map in the game. Even as a kid, like every time this map was brought up, it's like I couldn't remember what happened in this board map. It's just so forgettable. It's got the most boring costume scheme, the most forgettable Bowser battle in the end, and the most unpleasant music track across the entire board map. The item minigame Mallet Go Round requires us to smash 2 pillars off a carousel to claim the prize on top. This minigame would have worked better if we only had to swing once, but it requires us to swing twice on the same item, and we got a very strict time limit, which makes it very likely that you could come out with nothing. The duel game Psychic Safari is a button masher where we alternate between mashing the A and B button, one after the other, as we try to strengthen our mushroom rocks to try overpowering the opponents. The level ends with Bowser Sphinx trapping a Koopa in a stone for failing to solve his riddle, but our hero steps in and reveals that the answer to the riddle is Bowser himself, and we win. Bowser's defeated, Koopa is freed. It felt the most anticlimactic, plus Bowser's riddle wasn't even a riddle, it was just a guessing game of who's that Pokemon, but with Bowser's face. Horrorland is the last costume-themed level, being another one of my favorite levels. Long before Mario Party 6 made a whole game themed around a party that goes on through day and night, Horrorland beat that game by a little under a decade with just one level. Horrorland is a spooky themed level set outside of a haunted mansion, flooded with Boo, Ghosts, and Mr. Eyes. Our heroes are dressed up as wizards or a witch if you're Princess Peach, as we try to stop Wizard Bowser from turning people into frogs. Bowser just looks like he's cosplaying as Lord Voldemort here, and so every 3 turns, day turns to night and vice versa. During the day, Boo will be available to steal coins or stars along with Whomps. We gotta pay for shortcuts. At night, the Boos disappear and the Whomps are petrified and can't move to open up shortcuts anymore. I feel like it should have been reversed. Doesn't it seem that like it would make more sense for these things to come out at night instead of daylight? I really don't get why they made that decision. It's just typical storytelling. Usually weird or supernatural stuff happens at night, not in bright sunlight. It just makes no sense here. We can also pay Mr. I to chase us diagonally across the board, either to the top left or bottom right, so depending on where we activate him. So you can also pay a group of Boos and Mr. I to change from day and night instantly. The item minigame is arguably the easiest in the game. Coffin congestion feels similar to roll out the barrels, but it's easier to spot where our desired item is, as we constantly see them warping to other coffins before they close. We smash open the coffin to claim our prize. The dual game Mushroom Brew has Goomba show us mushroom ingredients that we need to put into the cauldron to create a star. The mushrooms are color-coded by 3 buttons, so the blue shrooms are for the A button, green shrooms are for B button, and the gray shrooms are for the Z button, or the ZL button if you're playing on Switch with a Pro controller. So whoever gets the most correct ingredients gets to create a star and they win the game. We unfortunately do not get to keep the star that we created. So in the end, Wizard Bowser turns Koopa into a frog, we duel him, restore Koopa, and we also turn Bowser into a frog. And, yep, that's it. After each map is completed, we get a shocking yet hilarious surprise. As we return to the menu, Toad's welcome back dialogue gets interrupted as the baby Bowsers take over. They kidnap Toad and try acting like nothing happened. So a new level is open, being called Bowserland, as baby Bowser acts as our host for this level. Bowserland could be summed up as this game's version of Disney's Magic Kingdom, for it's like right in the front dead center of the park, and it's got like all these amusement park rides, but it's of course more dark and morbid. It's surrounded by fire, and it's got Bowser's face plastered everywhere. Sadly, this is the only level with no costume gimmick. How funny would that have been if Bowser forced everyone to dress up as him, wearing like Bowser horns or the Bowser shell? That would have been really funny, but nope, we're just wearing our casual attire here. Every 5 turns, Baby Bowser will throw a parade that starts from the top center of the map and all the way towards the start, and if players get caught in the parade's path, they'll keep losing about 3 coins for every space taken until the parade ends. I once lost 33 coins for getting caught in the parade. So there are areas where we can pay a fee to rotate the parade's path to steer away from us and head towards other opponents. This map has a reversal for the bank feature. For walking by the bank actually gives us 5 free coins, but anyone who lands on the bank has to pay how many coins have been given out this whole game. And so yeah, that's pretty insane. This map also has the worst item in duel games in my opinion. The item game is Bowser Slots, which is just a direct clone of Slot Machine from Mario Party, but instead of giving us coins, we get items instead. It's one of the easiest item minigames to fail at, where you get nothing. The happening spaces can trap us in a ring around a blooper-based ride, and the only way to escape is to land on another happening space. Other happening spaces force us to go through warp pipes to the other ends of the map. Also, walking by a store space actually forces us to pay 12 coins to buy an item, and every time it's a skeleton key. The duel minigame, Rock Paper Mario, is an unfun clone of Rock Paper Scissors, where Mario beats Bowser, Bowser beats Peach, and Peach beats Mario. It's admittedly kind of funny, but I never liked Rock Paper Scissors in video games. Dumb luck games are never fun. At the end, the superstar faces off against Bowser to reclaim the theme park, but Bowser gains the Metal Cap power from Mario 64. So if you thought Super Smash Bros. Melee was the debut of Metal Bowser, actually it was Mario Party 2 all along. So the hero tries grabbing Bowser by the tail to throw him away Mario 64 style, but they can't do it and they give up. But the other players, along with Toad, cheer us on and they give us a star for power, as we succeed in tossing Bowser out of the park. In a funny reveal, the whole game story was revealed to be a play, as all the characters come on stage to take a bow for applause, and even Bowser was all a part of the act as we happily see him join the cast, and it's honestly a fun and silly ending. I miss the good old days when video game endings actually ended with a celebration, showing all the characters celebrating the day for being saved, along with congratulating the players for making it this far. Nowadays, games just awkwardly end abruptly and unceremoniously. They can have like an awful or unfunny joke or situation as it just abruptly cuts to the credits. I miss when video game endings actually left an impact. Even if they were very simple, they weren't, like Hollywood writing or anything. They weren't like blockbuster smash hit writing, but it was still fun and simple. To finish it all off, we get a beautiful credit sequence as we get some pretty nighttime visuals of the park as the characters and villains fly across the screen with some pretty music playing in the background. A great way to finish off the game. Now on to the minigames. While Mario Party 2 has a handful of new minigames, it also recycles and repurposes many minigames from the first game. After Mario Party 2, it wouldn't be until Mario Party The Top 100, Mario Party Superstars, and Super Mario Party Jamboree where we'd see past minigames brought back into the series. Although there was one minigame that returned to Mario Party 4, but I don't really consider that like a game that brings back minigames if it only brings back just one. So a lot of these mini games had the excuse for being brought back in later entries. For it was an excuse for them to remake them with better graphics. Where as for Mario Party 2, it's running on the exact same graphic engine, so it felt kind of pointless to bring some of these back. Most of them just felt like lazy rehashes with a new coat of paint. So here are the mini games that we can find in Mario Party 2. Abandoned Ship, a real tough button masher as we climb the poles of a sinking ship, as we turn left and right with the joystick to dodge Cheep Cheep and other masts. The first to the top wins. The obstacles in this minigame are ridiculously hard to avoid, and it feels like there's an invisible force that's pushing us back from reaching the top. No matter how fast we button mash, it just feels like occasionally the characters will halt for no reason. I really hate this one. Archer Rival, a 1 vs 3 minigame where 3 players are turned into a cutout puppet on a stick, as an archer needs to shoot them all down within the time limit. This minigame honestly sucks. The reload and shooting controls are way too slow. The CPU puppets are brain dead stupid, often standing still, sandwiching their teammates, leaving everyone to die instead of trying to strategically spread out for a better advantage. I really hate this one. Bob-omb Barrage, another 1 vs 3 minigame where 1 player rides around in a wooden tub to avoid the 3-player team as they flick the joystick at different speeds and measures to fling bob-ombs inside the tub and sink the single player. This is a tough minigame on both ends. The bomb flinging can be very unpredictable and really hard to get a hold of. It is an improvement over the casting controls from Castaways from the first game, but it's still really hard to find the right balance. Luckily, the single players can deflect the bombs if they bounce off the edge of the tub. Balloon Burst, a 2 vs 2 reimagining of the 4-player minigame from the first game of the same name. We alternate between the A and B or Z button to inflate a balloon until it explodes. Despite now being a team game, there's really not much of a difference, except instead of a dungeon, we're now on these towers in front of a mountain setting, and the Bowser balloons look more comically adorable this time. Bob Sled Run, a returning minigame, also a 2 vs 2 minigame, this time with the sleds being shaped like penguins, and for some reason they have visible buttholes in an E-rated game. The track is entirely redone with more narrow paths, more fog, and the addition of speed boosts. I honestly like the first game's version of this minigame a lot better. It's harder for all the wrong reasons than the second one. With its poorly aged visuals and frame rate, it's harder to see where anything is with all that annoying fog, and I just hate how narrow everything is. And then with the addition of the speed boosts, which make everything go faster, yeah, I just don't like this one anymore. Bombs Away, another returning minigame, except it's bigger and crazier than before. On top of the cannon fire, we now have bullet bills, and at the end, Bowser fires a giant rocket towards the center of the island. I honestly didn't like this minigame from the first that much, and despite there not being a very big difference this time around, I actually prefer this version over the first. I like how Bowser upgraded from a pirate ship to a warship, and his amped up arsenal is more comically exciting. I somehow found myself dying less in this version compared to the first, despite how this one's more over the top. I cannot explain that, but overall I just enjoyed it better. Bowl Over, a return of the bowling game from the first one, a 1 vs 3 game where 1 player bowls over the 3 players trapped in bowling pin outfits as they hop around. Unlike the first game where the bowler only gets 1 shot and the losers will lose coins if they get hit, while the survivors get nothing, in this game the bowler has 2 chances to bowl all 3 players' pins down at once. If we fail, the 3-player team actually gets coins. So the first game had very strict controls for the pins, for there were invisible barriers that prevented us from moving too far. There are still invisible barriers this time, but they seem to be less frequent and they're easier to get around in this one at least, so it's overall still fun to play, and I love the Desert Canyon theming. For some reason, Mario Party 2 was obsessed with redesigning past minigames with themes that don't even match the minigame anymore. So some do not work well at all, but this is one where somehow it works. Bowling on a desert canyon, it's so bizarre, and it gives some cool sunset lighting. I really like it. Bowser's Big Blast, a battle minigame, and it's one of my most hated minigames, not only in this game, but out of any Mario Party game. And Nintendo just won't let it die. They keep bringing it back for some reason. It's another one of those turn-taking, luck-based minigames where the last one standing wins. We pull a switch and hope that it doesn't trigger the Bowser Bomb countdown, and sometimes this minigame can go on way too long. I hate minigames that take no skill to win. I don't like wasting my time waiting for everyone to get it over with. I'm more of a fan of the high-speed action kind of minigames where you just gotta get in there and get stuff done. I don't like waiting around. I don't like, it's just so boring. Nintendo, please just let this minigame die. Quit bringing it back. Bumper Balloon Cars, a battle minigame where each player drives a spiked vehicle with a balloon on the back. The goal is to get behind each driver and pop their balloons. Last one standing wins. The controls are very tricky. You accelerate by pressing up on the control stick and reverse by going backwards on the control stick as we steer left and right. However, turning puts the vehicle at a complete halt, so you cannot accelerate and turn at the same time. This is a very manic and unpredictable minigame, but it is still fun. Bumper Balls, the iconic minigame returns, and this time with 3 variants. The characters ditched those weird monster face balls from the first one and replaced them with these colored Luxo Jr. Pixar balls. And so the 3 variants include a tower surrounded by lava, which plays exactly like the first games. The second variant has us on top of a snow mountain with very slippery controls. I just love the morbid detail there being a dead frozen Shy Guy in the center. Finally, there's the island variant, similar to the first game's arena, but this time with lumps and sand and rocks to make the layout more tricky to navigate. With a total of 3 variants, it really does make this slightly more entertaining than the first game's version of Bumper Balls, although it pretty much has the exact same gameplay and physics. Cake Factory. This is probably my favorite 2 vs 2 minigame. One player from each team is required to pick up the cakes from the conveyor belt with the A button, and you have to hold it to hold onto it, and then you let go to place it down. So the other team has to pick up the strawberries off the opposite conveyor belt and place them on top of the cake. It requires a lot of timing, as we not only have to act fast to get these items off the belts, but you have to make sure to place them down in a specific order. So like if you already placed the cake down, you cannot place another one down until your partner already put a strawberry on. Otherwise you're just stacking 2 cakes on top of each other, and that's not allowed. And same can be said about strawberries. You cannot place a strawberry down until there's a cake on the center. Overall, it's just a really fun and frantic minigame. Crane Game, one of the worst 1 vs 3 minigames from Mario Party, but this time with no harsh punishments for the victims. This time, the crane player must collect all 3 players before time runs out. Along the way, we need to collect these watches to increase the time. The clocks don't require button mashing, but we still need a button mash to carry the other players, while the players still need a button mash to try to break free. I still don't like this minigame, but I will admit it is an improvement over the first one. I really appreciate how it gives the 3-player team a chance to win this time, instead of just making them helpless and just losing half their coins if they get captured. It's still an annoying minigame, but it's less annoying this time at least. Also, I love the outer space retheming, and I love how the crane now looks like a UFO. It almost makes you wonder if they were inspired by Toy Story with like Pizza Planet or something. Crazy Cutters, a returning Mario Party minigame. This time, it's a battle minigame. Once again, we have to control our characters on these jackhammers as we try drawing out to match these outlines of these 3 Mario enemies. This time with the inclusion of Chain Chomp, Blooper, and Cheep Cheep. I wasn't able to tell if the scoring issue was fixed in this minigame, unlike the first game, but there's an even bigger and more annoying glitch that occurred this time. I've never seen this happen before, but during one game, as I moved to the right, my character halted in the middle of the minigame, as if they just made a full lap around the outline. I ended up getting 0 points as everyone else kept going. It was so frustrating. I've never seen this happen before, so I almost want to say that this one is better than the first one, but because of that glitch, I have to say that it's actually better in the first game. It's a shame, though. I really want to like these minigames. They're such a cool idea. I love the idea of Crazy Cutters, but they're just plagued with so many issues. Day at the Races, a dumb luck battle minigame where we take turns picking between Bob-omb, Boo, Thwomp, or Womp as we watch them race and hope that our pick wins. It's basically just a horse race with Mario baddies. Have fun watching our picks randomly falling over and messing everything up. I roll my eyes every time this minigame gets picked. I don't even bother watching it anymore. It's like usually I'll just pull my phone out and wait for it to get over. It's just slow and boring. We don't even have a real choice with this one. The turn to pick the racers is based on who rolled the highest number from the beginning of the board map, which means that 4th place really won't have a choice in picking their character because they're forced to settle with whoever's last. I just can't stand this one. It sucks. Deep Sea Salvage. It's shocking to realize that Mario Party 2 is really lacking a variety of minigames that let us freely run around to collect as many coins as we can. This is the only 4-player minigame with this objective in Mario Party 2. It feels familiar to the treasure diving minigames from the first one, but we're in submarines that constantly descend as we tap the A button to surface, as we use the joystick to steer towards the coins that the Hammer Brothers drop while trying to avoid the mines. It's overall a simple but fun game. Destruction Duet, a 2 vs 2 minigame where each team has to smash their Bowser statues first. The key is to not rely on punching alone, and to occasionally try to jump kick as well. This minigame has 3 different variants with 3 different heights and defenses. The taller they are, the harder they are to break. One trick to try to get it done faster is to try jumping on top of the statue and ground pound on the statue, because ground pounding is the strongest attack you can do to destroy these, but you can only have one player on top at a time. But that mostly works only for the shortest variant of this minigame. For in the taller variants, it is possible to run around, jump on your partner for a boost to the top, but it can waste a bit of time for you to do that, so you're better off just standing there and just dealing punches and jump kicks. It's overall a fun idea, but I think this minigame would have worked better with multiple weaker statues instead of just one tough statue. It should have been a race to smash as many statues as we can, with bigger ones being worth more points despite being tougher to smash open. It's still a good minigame overall though, it just could have been better. Dizzy Dancing. The players get dizzy from a giant record player as we guide our dizzy characters to the center of the record to try collecting the floating music note. The controls get really scrambled every time this minigame starts. For instance, one game could start off where turning left requires you to move forward, while turning right may require moving downward on the joystick. It's tricky, but it's a fun dizzy race to the music note. Driver's Ed. I already discussed this one earlier in the minigame coaster section. It's a really fun ultimate reward for completing the game, but it had no business needing such a ridiculous unlock requirement. It's split across 5 different race courses, but there are no rewards for beating them, but it does record your best records every time. I was nearly able to beat them all on the first try, but admittedly, during one of the early levels, I accidentally drove through an arrow incorrectly, so I had to start over. But other than that, I was able to get them all done with one try. Dungeon Dash, the minigame you unlock after beating normal mode in minigame Coaster, along with buying all the item minigames. It's just a rehash of Desert Dash from Mario Party. I don't get why we had to go through so much effort just to get a simple reskin of a forgettable minigame from the first, but admittedly, the dungeon escape premise is more visually fun than just scooting through a dry desert. It still wasn't worth the hassle of unlocking, but that's nothing compared to the other 2 hidden minigames that had even harder unlock requirements. Facelift. Just like in the first game, this is my favorite minigame, but too bad it's one minigame that rarely ever gets picked for its lock behind the battle spaces, and for some reason it doesn't spawn as much as other battle minigames. Not to mention how ridiculously hard it is to unlock the battle minigame tree for minigame part to allow you to play this minigame for free as many times as you want. Facelift plays just like before, but instead of messing with Bowser's face, we are now forced to mess with the playable characters' faces. Mario, Luigi, and Wario arguably have the funniest facial results, the most interactive face pulling, with us being able to mess with their hats, their nose, their mustache, ears, and lips. Peach is one of the most underwhelming characters to mess with, for her face is very off limits and all you can really mess with is her hair. Admittedly, her nose is too small, so I can kind of understand why they don't let you stretch that out, but you can't even stretch out her mouth or her chin or her ears, so yeah, Peach feels like one of the most boring characters you can get in this minigame. Yoshi just has his cheeks, nose, and mouth, while DK has the top of his hair, which for some reason looks like a swirly pile of poo in this minigame. You can also mess with his ears, his nostrils, and mouth. Overall, it's a fun surprise whenever it gets picked. It's a shame that we never got that DS tech demo called Mario Face, where it let players mess with the faces of Mario and pals, but with the touch controls, it would have made for such a fun side feature in Mario 64 DS or even Mario Party DS. So yeah, I don't get why Nintendo only had that as a tech demo. They should have made that fun for everyone to try out. Filet Relay, a 1 vs 3 race where each player dresses up in these silly penguin outfits as we waddle by bashing the A button to reach the goal. Going too fast will cause the players to slip and fall, and give them quite a bit of time to recover. It's harder for the single player for their outfit is much heavier and slower, but it means that the 3-player team will have to limit their button mashing, otherwise they'll fall way too easily. So it's a silly minigame, and I love how each character gets a different colored costume that matches their characters. A feature that is sorely missing in every Mario Party game after this. Nowadays, each player gets a colored object or costume based on the player number they are. So usually like player 1 will get red, player 2 will get blue, or I miss when the colors were assigned by characters, like all of Mario's items being red, Peach's pink, Yoshi's green, DK's orange, etc. I miss that. It added such personality and character to these games. Grab Bag, another brought back minigame, this time as a battle minigame. We don't steal coins from each other like before, but instead steal mushrooms, so whoever has the most by the end wins. I was never a fan of this one in the first game. This minigame feels exactly the same as before, but now it's in an arena instead of a dungeon. I hate how it takes forever for the results to come up, as the CPU take forever to move into a certain position. It's painful to watch every time. Handcar Haylock, one of the brought back minigames from Mario Party. It's overall a lot easier than the first, but it's still possible to fall off the track in this version, but you'd have to be stupid and try intentionally to fall off for that to happen. The first game had us in a fiery setting, while this one has more of a fantasy mine in the sky setting. I'm not a fan of the button mashing gameplay, but I do prefer this one over the first, for you don't have to rely on pulling on the brakes to make turns anymore. I do prefer the dark and fiery atmosphere from the first minigame, but versus the bright and foggy blank look of the sequel's version, but otherwise I'd say the gameplay is actually better in the sequel. Hexagon Heat, a reskin of Mushroom Mix-Up, replacing the mushrooms with metal hexagon platforms that rise out of the lava. So yeah, instead of water, we got lava. So Toad raises a colored flag as we rush over to the platform that matches that color before falling into the lava. Despite being the exact same game as before, this one does feel more intense than the first, for instead of falling to water, the characters get more brutally defeated by burning alive. So I do prefer Mushroom Mix-Up because I loved how it was just more colorful though. Honeycomb Hayvac. One of the game's worst minigames. It takes incredibly dumb luck and leaves many players feeling hopeless. Ignore what those 90s honeycomb commercials told you. These are honeycombs that you do not want. This minigame is a whole lot of nothing, as we roll a dice from 1 to 2 to collect fruit while trying to avoid the honeycombs, which will cause angry bees to chase the victims out of the game. Not the bees! Ah! Last one standing wins. I question why this wasn't a battle minigame, but so there are so many ways that this minigame could have worked a lot better. The dice should have at least been able to roll up more than 2, maybe up to 4 or 5, and it should have been able to spin faster so it's more random. The fruits you collected should have been worth points, and the honeycomb should have at least subtracted points or forced you to skip a turn or something. So, again, why wasn't this a battle minigame? It feels like second place at least deserves something for making it that far. So, luckily, every minigame since Mario Party 9 was reinvented to reward second and third place players. So even though the rewards are minor compared to the first place though. So also the music in this minigame is very ear-grating, as if someone shoved bees and a harmonica into a grinder. Yeah, overall I absolutely hate this minigame. Hot Bob-omb, another revised minigame, now a battle elimination based game. So the first game ended after the bomb blew up on one player, but this time it lasts 3 rounds until one player is left standing. So I might have liked this minigame better if our coins weren't placed under a bet against our will. It makes losing this minigame more annoying than losing in the first game. So at least in the first game, if you got third or second, you didn't lose anything, but first place didn't win anything either. So yeah, either way, I just don't really care for this one. Hot Rope Jump, the return of an iconic minigame from the first game, and it's honestly better this time. The first game would abruptly end when one player lost, and it would just subtract a big number of coins from the loser, and it wouldn't bother rewarding anyone who actually didn't get hit. So this time, it's treated like a survival challenge, and it won't end until the last one is standing. If everyone loses at once, it's a draw, and no one wins. This minigame works so much better as a survival challenge, and I love the addition of how the flames start off blue, only to turn orange a little bit into the game. It really adds a bit of a visual flair to this, but I question why this wasn't a battle minigame. Feels like second place at least deserves a prize as well. So, Lava Isle Tile, a platforming brawl as these angry blocks start sliding around as we avoid standing on the moving ones, and we try punching other players into the lava. Last one standing wins, or it's a draw. This one is tricky on harder difficulties, but it's a fun challenge. Once again, why wasn't this a battle minigame? Lights Out, a 1 versus 3 game where one player has a mallet as they try bashing the 3 light bulbs out of the 3-player team. So this is the only minigame to have the return of the hammer from the first Mario Party. So the lights will occasionally go out, hiding the hammer wielder, but exposing the light bulbs. The hammer wielder needs to run around through the dark and knock out all the 3 players, while the other team needs to try surviving until time runs out. This is a really fun minigame on either end. Look away. Oh, I hate this minigame. a 1 versus 3 game where 3 players have to tilt the joystick to aim their character's floating heads in a direction that doesn't match player 1, or they get eliminated. Player 1 has 5 rounds to eliminate all 3 players, or it's game over, and the team of 3 wins. This minigame goes on way too long. It's annoying, it takes dumb luck, and it sucks how players can cancel out their moves and change directions after already picking one. The only good thing I have to say about this minigame is that the characters can have really goofy expressions when they've been foiled. They actually remade this minigame for Mario Party Superstars, and it ruined what little charm that this minigame had by replacing the floating heads with moving portraits of the characters' upper halves. And the characters no longer have the wacky anime expressions. They really don't even have facial expressions anymore. The minigame overall just really sucks. Looney Lumberjacks, a 2 versus 2 game where we alternate between the A and B buttons with our partners to saw a log before the opponent. The key isn't to do it as fast as possible, but to make sure that we make the longest cuts before switching buttons. Longer cuts equal stronger cuts. It's simple but fun. Magnet Carta, a 2 versus 2 game with the tricky control scheme from Bumper Balloon Kart, except with magnets on the front instead of spikes. We drive around to grab these coins and drive them back to our goals while trying to avoid bumping into our partners. The main goal is to reach the big treasure chest that's worth 10 coins, but it requires clearing out some of the other coins and money bags in the way first. Overall, it's a decent one. Mecha Marathon, a tiring button mash minigame where we have to button mash both the A and B button at the same time to wind up these mecha fly guys to fly across a racetrack. Now, when I was a kid, I could never mash fast enough, so I always lost this minigame. One thing I did wrong was that I was solely relying on just bending my thumb to button mash, but the real key is to put your entire arm into it. So what I do is I stick my thumb out sideways, like I'm giving a sideways thumbs up, and I just move my arm up and down rapidly fast to bash with the side of my thumb. So this would have saved me a lot of time if I knew this tactic back then, but it still doesn't change how repetitive, tiring, and boring the gameplay really is. This was one of the main reasons I could never beat Minigame Coaster back then, but even if I did beat it back then, I would have had an even harder time with the minigames that followed. So I don't hate this minigame as much as I used to, but it still brings back painful memories, and I still don't think it's a very good minigame. I can imagine this minigame was originally going to have the control scheme from Mario Party where you rotate with the joystick, but I can imagine after all the injuries that were reported, they had to turn it into a button masher instead. So move to the music, a pesky 1 versus 3 game where one player has to perform dance moves with the A, B, and Z buttons, along with 4 arrow directions with the joystick motions. So the 3 team members have to memorize the motions and take turns repeating them at the right moment. It's a very unfun minigame for the 3-player team, but on the bright side, it only goes on for 2 short rounds, so it ends pretty quickly, unlike later Mario Party games with similar gameplay that goes on way too long. Platform Peril, another brought back minigame. While the original minigame had some simple but fun visuals with the checker pattern platforms, admittedly it was very repetitive with the same evenly gapped platforms with the same size and randomly placed pyramid shapes on top to try to mess things up. But the sequel has a wider range of platforms, big and small. Some are motionless, some are moving, along with forward and back conveyor belts. It might be trickier than the first, but it's just more fun. I just wish it wasn't a race. It makes no sense to make it a race when everyone moves around at the same speed. It takes dumb luck to reach first place. I never bothered jumping for those floating coins, so they just feel like a distraction to slow you down. Quicksand Cache, or is it Quicksand Cache? I have no idea how to pronounce that. So, a 1 versus 3 game where one player in a giant Bowser costume has the godlike powers to control quicksand. Don't ask me how, it's weird, I know. The one player can change the direction by tilting the joystick left or right as they try to steer all the coins away from the other 3 players and guide them towards themselves. The other 3 players have to try not to get sucked into the center of the quicksand while trying to collect whatever coins they can. This minigame is obviously better if you're the one in the suit, but it's not an unfair minigame for the 3 players. The quicksand may slow the players down, but it's real easy to avoid getting sucked into the quicksand, as long as you make good judgment and distance. It can be tempting to try going for the sacks of coins that are worth 5, but once they reach a certain distance, you gotta make the wise choice to just let it go, or you'll just end up drowning in sand. So this minigame has no real winner. It just lets whoever keep whatever they collected. So it's a simple but fun one. Rainbow Run, one of the hardest minigames to unlock along with Driver's Ed. It requires beating hard mode in Minigame Coaster and buying all the other minigames. So You're rewarded with a reskin of Tightrope Treachery from Mario Party. Instead of crossing across a rope over the ocean, we walk across a rainbow beam and have to reach the rainbow ring at the end, which honestly looks like the intro and outro of every Tiny Toons episode. Meanwhile, the 3 players pilot flying ships to gun us down. It may be a rehash of a lame game from the first one, but I actually do like the colorful makeover it got. But why was such a forgettable minigame from the first one treated like a grand reward that requires beating a Dumb Luck expert mode that most kids won't even bother going through? It's such an underwhelming reward, it would have been better off as a regular minigame from the beginning. Rake 'em in, a battle minigame where we press the A button to have to control these giant mechanical rakes to rake these mushrooms into our baskets while trying to avoid the poison shrooms. Gold shrooms are worth the most points. This is a fun idea, but it's an incredibly faulty minigame. The rakes don't rake them in like they should, but instead they bump them to the side, it feels like. If it had actual raking physics, this would have been a really fun minigame, but the way it is, it's just way too faulty. Roll call. Oh great, what every kid wants in their video games. Math. We need to use the A button to count all of the characters on screen, while pressing the B button to subtract in case we overcounted. This can be a real tricky minigame, for the characters are constantly moving, which may lead to you having to recount a few times. So there are 3 variants of this minigame, including Bob-ombs, where over time, 1 or more Bob-omb may blow up, meaning that you'll have to make sure to subtract the ones that blew up. The Boo variant has boos fading in and out, while Toads may blend in with these mushrooms that are in the background. I don't hate this minigame, but I feel like in the cases where everyone counted wrong, it should at least reward whoever came closest to the right answer. Instead, it just says a draw and nobody gets anything. So this could have been a better minigame. It might have worked better as a battle minigame. Skateboard Scamper. Unlike the first game's crumbling brick path with lava and thwomps to avoid, this one has us being chased by a giant boo through a haunted mansion as we jump over these rising stairs and floor pieces. I do love the haunted makeover, but I feel like the gameplay is really flawed. It's hard to juggle between mashing the B button and then pressing the A button to jump every once in a while. It really feels like it causes you to lose speed in between, so it often feels like it takes dumb luck to get first place, just like in the first game. Shell Shocked. We control our characters in shell-shaped tanks as we fire straight or arching shots at the other players. We only have 2 HP and the last one standing wins. This minigame has 3 different stage variants picked at random, with the only difference being the placements of the warp pipe obstacles. I used to love this one as a kid, but I find it more annoying nowadays. The controls are too slow, the shooting range is short, and the aiming is horrible. It has bad hit collision, where sometimes you try like shooting past a warp pipe to shoot like a player, but instead it bumps right into the warp pipe despite how you weren't even aiming at it. So it often takes dumb luck to win this one. Maybe it would have been better if it gave us 5 HP instead of 2. This should have been a battle minigame instead of a 4-player minigame. Shock, Drop, and Roll. A crazy 1 versus 3 game where 3 players are trapped running on top of a giant wheel as one player pulls a lever to try changing the direction of the wheel to make them fall off into the electricity. This is a very challenging minigame for the 3-player team, and it may take a lot of practice, but once you get the hang of it, it can be a lot of fun on both ends. Shy Guy Says, ugh. One of my most hated minigames, and it returns once again. Nintendo just refuses to let this one die. We have to mimic the Shy Guy's pesky flags while trying not to fall for his pesky fake outs. This minigame has such a questionable redesign. It's the exact same gameplay, but instead of the fitting theming of a Captain Shy Guy cutting our lines, this time the Shy Guy is standing on a rainbow with a bow and arrow as the players are floating on balloons, only to have their balloons shot down if they fail to mimic his commands. What is with the drastic theme change? As bad as Shy Guy Says was, I will at least say the pirate theme actually worked really well with the gameplay. Sky Pilot, a 2 versus 2 race where one player steers a giant bird while the other player in the back moves the joystick up and down to flap the wings for speed. I feel very mixed about this one. It's a fun idea, but the controls are way too slow, and you're basically screwed if you're paired with a CPU pilot. The CPU are brain dead stupid and don't know how to steer. I always do well when I'm the pilot. I never lose when I'm the one in control. It helps that I memorize the layout of the boost rainbows. I remember where the cannons are located, the best directions to dodge them. It feels like dumb luck when you're the ones flapping the wings. We also got to watch out for the Bowser balloons midway through the race. This minigame really does look inappropriate, though, with the way that the characters in the back keep thrusting their heads up and down. I'm not even going to bother saying what it looks like, but yeah, it looks totally wrong. Slot Car Derby, a brought back minigame from the first game where we move our characters in these tiny cars with just the joystick to accelerate, and we have to let go to slow down if the characters are starting to lose control, otherwise they'll spin out. So I always hated this minigame in the first game, and it somehow plays worse in the sequel. It feels like the characters are randomly dropping speed compared to the first one, and it's real hard to tell when the characters are about to spin out this time due to the zoomed out camera. So unlike the first game, which only had 2 variants, this one has 3 different racetracks. Speed Hockey, a 2 vs 2 air hockey minigame with a Koopa shell for a hockey puck. It sounds like a fun minigame, but the shell moves way too fast and the bounce physics feel really off, and the CPU are brain dead slow and they are no help at all. They just stand around and do nothing. I hate this one. Sneak and Snore, oh my god. God, so many bad ones in a row. A stealth-based game where each player sneaks through a dungeon inside these barrels as we try activating a switch to open an exit while trying not to wake up the sleeping Chain Chomp. If the Chomp sees you outside of your barrel, you're out. The problem with this minigame is that it requires hiding in your barrel to evade the Chomp, and the only way to hide in your barrel is to let go of the joystick, but the characters have such delayed animations upon stopping that it feels impossible to hide right in time. The timing in this minigame is awful, and the minigame is more unbearable if you're playing on harder difficulties, for the CPU are practically programmed to move ridiculously fast, and they luck out every time. They rarely ever get caught, so Minigame Coaster's hard mode made me absolutely hate this minigame more than I ever did before. This minigame would have been so much better off if all you had to do was hold the Z button to instantly duck inside of your barrel. That would have had me forgive this minigame entirely, but because of that delay, it sucks all the fun that this minigame could have had. Tile Driver. We ground pound on a flip panel puzzle to match the character picture shown in the center, either being a Goomba, a Boo, or a Koopa. It's a very simple minigame, but it's inoffensive. Tipsy Tourney, a returning minigame from the first one, but with flashier animated tiles. It's the exact same gameplay as before. We run around to tilt a board to guide a Koopa shell to fill in these blank tiles, so the first one to complete it wins. It's a fun idea, but the tilt physics honestly kind of stink. It would probably have been done a lot better if it was remade today. I can't recall if it was ever remade, to be honest, in any of the HD Mario Party games. Toad Bandstand, a reimagining of Mario Bandstand from the first game, but now it's a 2 vs 2 game. We no longer have a conductor that's playable, for a CPU of Toad is now the conductor, but he has really no role to the minigame. So we no longer have the trumpeter or someone playing the violin, and instead we just had 2 fluters and 2 drummers. It's the same gameplay as before, as we time our instruments at the right moment to match the little music symbols. So while the music is less ear-grating this time around, I really have to say that I actually like the first game's version of this minigame better. The theming in that one being based on a concert stage setting, it just fit the minigame a lot better. And then it was fun how each player got a random instrument or the conductor role. Meanwhile, the sequel's version has us playing in a forest with giant random flowers that drop nuts on us if we mess up. So where it made more sense in the first one, where instead we got basically booed at by an audience and we had cans thrown at us. So the first game setting just fit this minigame's gameplay a lot better. Also, you didn't have to worry about losing the minigame because you're paired with a stupid partner who can't play the easiest rhythm minigame in the world. I got the CPU so brain dead in this when it comes to 2 vs 2, but then they're overpowered when it comes to the free-for-all minigames. I just don't understand it. Toad in the Box, a dice roll minigame where we have to land the dice on Toad 5 times to win. The first half of the minigame relies on timing, but the last 2 rolls get so fast that it relies on dumb luck. I'm overall not the biggest fan of this one. It's not awful, but I don't find it that fun either, but I do like the colorful game show scenery. Torpedo Targets. This is probably the worst 2 vs 2 minigame. One player pilots a submarine as the second player releases torpedoes. We can only fire 1 torpedo at a time and it takes forever to reload. The goal is to find these targets and shoot them down with the torpedoes. The controls and aiming for the sub are difficult and frustrating, and there's no camera controls, which really should have been used for this. The camera is awful, and worst of all, the CPU are brain dead stupid, and it takes dumb luck to win this one. This minigame really could have used a mini-map to show us the targets. This minigame would have worked so much better if more than 1 target appeared at a time. it really needed a crosshair, and the missiles should have at least had a slight homing beacon to them or something. It should have at least homed in a little bit on the targets to make the shooting easier. This was a fun idea for a minigame, but it's horribly wasted, especially by the stupid CPU partners that do absolutely nothing. Usually when I play this game, I for some reason get stuck with the torpedoes, and I get so annoyed at the CPU drivers who just sit there. It's like, just drive upward a little bit, give me a better position to aim at. And no, they just stand there. And then meanwhile, the CPU opponents come in and they just take the targets every time. This minigame is so freaking flawed. And finally, there's Totem Pole Pound. We ground pound on totems until they're buried into the ground. The first one to bury their totem pole wins. The key isn't to do it as fast as you can, but to ground pound at the height of your jump for a more powerful pound. I used to like this one as a kid, but I find it kind of boring nowadays, and when playing on harder difficulties, it feels like it takes dumb luck to win. I feel like the recovery time between the ground pounds take forever. It feels like you could just get it done a lot faster if it didn't have such slow recovery delays every time. So it really holds back what could have been a fun, simple minigame. So, what are my overall thoughts on Mario Party 2? Is it indeed the best Mario Party game ever made like most people claim it is? While I loved this game as a kid, nowadays I do find it a bit overrated. I do love the costume party gimmick, and the board maps and items are a huge improvement, and they make the party mode much more fun than they were in the first game. But a lot of these minigames are either frustrating, they drag on too long, take too much dumb luck, or they're just lazy rehashes from the first game. So I had a lot more fun with the board maps in this game, but honestly I felt very mixed about the minigame selection this time. I don't find the main menu or minigame land as entertaining as it should be. It's not as memorable as the layout of Mushroom Village, but I do like how much more condensed that it is now. Makes everything more easier to find and locate. I like how the minigames are easier to buy, with the easier ways to stock up on coins. Overall, the multiplayer party mode aspect might be better in this game, but as for the single player mode, it's honestly the worst single player mode out of the entire Mario Party franchise. Minigame Coaster is one of the most frustrating and exhausting experiences I've ever felt in a video game. Not even Sonic Shuffle got me this frustrated. I am so thankful that Nintendo ditched this type of arcade single player mode in future games, but what they did next with Mario Party 3 single player was honestly not the best substitute. More on that next time. I do think Mario Party 2 has the best presentation out of any Mario Party series, though. I don't think it has the best gameplay, but it definitely has the best presentation. With a simple but fun intro to really get us into the game. It has amusing climaxes against Bowser to finish off each party. No entry since has ever come close to topping this game's presentation. So I might not love this game now as much as I did when I was a kid, but it's still overall a pretty good game. I don't think it deserves to be called the best Mario Party game ever made, though. So out of the two Mario Party games I've already reviewed, I'd put Mario Party 2 below Super Mario Party Jamboree, but I'll definitely say Mario Party 2 is indeed better than the first game. I give Mario Party 2 a 7.5 out of 10. Join me next time when I look over the last entry to release on the N64 with Mario Party 3. Thank you so much for watching, see you next time, and have a great day.